Hello and welcome to Mr.EvilWakes. If you love scary stories to sleep to, you're in the right place. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from in the world. Now, relax, close your eyes, and let the rain carry you into the darkness.
Story 1. My parents forbade me from ever entering their bedroom. I finally broke in, and I think the knocking I've heard my whole life was my sister, asking me to kill her. There are rules in every family. Don't leave your wet towel on the floor. No TV until your homework is done. Normal things. In my family, we had all of those, plus one more. One rule that was absolute, unspoken, and enforced with a silent, terrifying finality: you do not go into mom and dad's bedroom. It wasn't just a knock first situation. The door was always locked. I was never, ever, for any reason, allowed inside. Not to ask a question, not to retrieve a stray toy that had rolled under the door. That room was a fortress, and for my parents I was an invader. And from as far back as my memory goes, I knew why I wanted to go in. It was the knocking. It wasn't a constant sound. It was subtle. A soft, rhythmic thump, 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 that you could only hear if you were standing in the hallway right outside their door. It came from inside, from the far wall of their room, the one that backed up against the old linen closet. I first noticed it when I was maybe 6 or 7. I thought it was the pipes. But the sound was too steady, too intentional. The curiosity of every child is a powerful force. A few times, I found the door unlocked by mistake. I'd sneak in, the thick carpet muffling my footsteps. The room was always dim, the heavy curtains drawn. It smelled of my mom's faint lavender perfume and my dad's cedarwood aftershave. It was just a normal bedroom. A big bed, a dresser, a tall, imposing wooden wardrobe against the far wall. And when I got close to that wardrobe, the sound was clearer. Thump, thump, thump. It was coming from behind it. From inside the wall. I always got caught. It was like my mother had a sixth sense. I'd be in there for less than a minute, and I'd hear her footsteps in the hall. The look on her face wasn't just anger. It was a deep, primal panic, a terror that made her features sharp and strange. The punishments were swift and severe. No TV, no friends, grounded for weeks. My dad would handle the lectures, his voice a low, cold monotone that was far scarier than yelling. There are places in this house that are ours, and ours alone. You will respect that, or you will find yourself respecting nothing at all. As a teenager, I tried a different approach, and thought that direct confrontation will do the thing. I asked them at the dinner table one night, "Why can't I go in your room? And what's that knocking sound I always hear?" Silence. The clinking of cutlery on plates stopped. My dad slowly put his fork down and leveled a gaze at me that was as hard and cold as granite. My mom just stared at her plate, her knuckles white where she gripped her knife. "There is no knocking sound," my dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And you will drop this. This is the last time we will ever speak of it. If you mention it again, or if I find out you have tried to enter our room again, the consequences will be something you cannot begin to imagine." I understood. I understood. I dropped it. But I never forgot. My mother's behavior only deepened the mystery. She was a good mom, loving in her own distant way. She went to work, she cooked, she cleaned. But any free time she had, she spent in that room. She'd disappear behind that locked door for hours on end. Sometimes I'd press my ear to the door and just listen. I never heard a TV, or music. Just a profound, heavy silence, occasionally punctuated by her soft, humming a tune with no melody, or the faint sound of her whispering to someone who never whispered back. Now, I'm 21. I've saved up enough from my part-time job to finally get my own place, a tiny apartment across town. I'm leaving. And a single, overwhelming thought has dominated my mind for weeks: it's now or never. I can't leave this house without knowing. This secret has been a silent, third parent to me my entire life. A ghost at every family dinner, a shadow in every hallway. I have to cast the light on it before I go. I told my dad I was ready to move out. He was relieved. That's the only word for it. There was no sadness, just a weary sense of relief. He and my mom wished me luck, told me they were proud. I asked him, one last time, my voice trembling slightly, "Dad, before I go, please, just tell me what's in the room." His face hardened instantly. The mask of the proud father fell away, revealing the cold, stern guardian of the secret. "Your new life begins when you walk out that door," he said. "What is in this house is part of your old one. You will leave it behind. Do you understand me? You will leave it all behind." That was his final answer. And it was my final motivation. I spent my last night packing my bags, a hollow feeling in my chest. The next morning, I watched from my bedroom window as their cars pulled out of the driveway, one after the other, on their way to work. The house was finally mine. My heart was a frantic bird in my ribs. I walked to the kitchen, to the old ceramic cookie jar shaped like a smiling pig. It was where they'd always kept the spare keys. I reached inside, my fingers closing around a single, cold, brass key. The key to their room. I stood before their door, the key trembling in my hand. It slid into the lock with a well-oiled click. I turned it, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The room was exactly as I remembered it. Dim, still, smelling of lavender and cedar. The big, dark wardrobe stood like a monolith against the far wall. And as I crept closer, I heard it. Clearer than ever before. Thump, thump, thump. It was a slow, weak, but steady rhythm. A sound of flesh on wood. I knelt down, pressing my ear against the cold plaster of the wall, right beside the wardrobe. The sound was right there, on the other side. My own breathing was loud in my ears. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I just needed to prove to myself that I wasn't insane. I spoke to the wall, my voice a choked whisper. "Hello. Is someone there?" The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was so absolute it felt like a pressure against my eardrums. I waited. Nothing. I was about to stand up, to write it off as the house settling, when a sound came back through the wall. It was a voice. A faint, dry, rasping sound. A feminine voice, stretched and thin, like a recording played on dying batteries. It spoke in broken, staggered syllables. K-il-m-e-e. I jerked back as if I'd been burned. I scrambled away from the wall, my mind refusing to process the words. "Kill me." I must have misheard. It had to be something else. But the voice came again, a little stronger this time, a desperate, scratching plea. "Kill me, please." This was real. There was someone in the wall. A prisoner. My mind went to a dark place, thinking my parents were monsters, that they had someone locked away. I looked at the wardrobe. It wasn't just against the wall, it was clearly, deliberately, blocking something. M's system was flooded by the adrenaline. I grabbed the sides of the heavy wardrobe and pulled. It was old, solid wood, and it barely budged. I grunted, dug my heels in, and pulled with every ounce of strength I had, my muscles screaming in protest. It moved, scraping and groaning across the floor, inch by agonizing inch. Behind it, where there should have been a plain wall, there was a door. It was a small, simple wooden door, painted the same color as the walls, designed to be invisible. It had a simple brass knob, but no keyhole. It wasn't locked, I could enter. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. It was cold. I turned it, pulled, and the door swung open with a low, mournful creak, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. I pushed it open the rest of the way. The space behind it was small, no bigger than a closet. It was a room, a hidden, secret room. It was filled with the clutter of a life I'd never known. Tiny dresses hanging from a single hook. A small, dusty mobile with faded pastel animals. A stack of photo albums. I picked one up. On the cover, in my mother's handwriting, it just said, "Our Angel." I opened it. The photos were of my parents, younger, happier, their faces bright with a joy I had never seen in them. And in their arms, they were holding a baby with a wisp of dark hair in my father's eyes. In the center of the small, cramped room was a makeshift altar. A small wooden table, covered in a white lace cloth, now yellowed with age. It was surrounded by dozens of candles, some new, some burned down to melted stubs of wax. And on the altar, lying on a small, silk pillow, I saw it. It was the baby from the photos. But it wasn't a baby anymore. It was a thing. Its body was small, shrunken, and desiccated. Mummified. Its skin was a pale, translucent parchment stretched tight over a tiny, bird-like skeleton. Its eyes were closed, its mouth a tiny, black O in its shrunken face. It was horrific, a tiny, preserved corpse displayed like a holy relic. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to touch it. A pull, a need to connect with this impossible, tragic thing. I reached out a shaking hand and gently, so gently, laid my fingertips on its cold, dry forehead. And the world exploded. I saw visions, memories, and pictures that are not my own. All flooded my mind with the force of a tidal wave. I saw a sterile, white hospital room. My mother, sobbing, her face buried in my father's chest. A doctor, with a grim face, saying the words, "I'm so sorry." There was nothing more we could do. Your daughter is gone. I saw my parents in their bedroom, the one I stood in now. They were holding the tiny, still body of their daughter, wrapped in a hospital blanket. My father, with a face covered by a mask of desperate, insane grief, was drawing a circle on the floor with red chalk. "We can bring her back," he was whispering, his voice was a frantic prayer. "The book said we could. We just have to anchor her. Give her a vessel to stay in." I saw them place the tiny body in the center of the circle, on the altar. I saw them kneeling, chanting words from a language that made my teeth ache. I saw the candles flicker and die, and a coldness fill the room as the tiny body on the altar twitched, just once. And I felt her spirit, trapped, snatched back from the piece of oblivion and slammed back into her dead, decaying shell. I felt her confusion, her terror, her unending, eternal suffering. A conscious mind, growing, learning, trapped in an inert, unchanging prison of flesh, unable to move, unable to speak, able to do nothing but feel the slow, inexorable passage of decades and knock, knock, knock on the silent wall of their bedroom. And through it all, I heard her voice as a clear, soul-shattering scream inside my own head. "Please, kill me." I ripped my hand away, stumbling back, a strangled sob tearing from my throat. I finally understood. My parents weren't monsters. Not in the way I'd thought. They were just broken. Drowned in a grief so profound they had committed an atrocity to try and escape it. They hadn't imprisoned a stranger. They had imprisoned their own daughter. My sister. I knew what I had to do. There was no other choice. I grabbed an old, soft blanket from the foot of their bed, returned to the hidden room, and carefully, reverently, wrapped the tiny, mummified body. It was as light as a bundle of dry leaves. I put it in my duffel bag, on top of my clothes. I took one last look at the sad, terrible little room, and then I walked out. I didn't close the hidden door. I didn't move the wardrobe back. I wanted them to know. I left the key on the kitchen table, walked out the front door, and never looked back. The drive was a blur. The visions didn't stop. I felt her gratitude, a wave of pure, beautiful relief, but it was tangled with the agony of her long imprisonment. I felt her pain, her loneliness, her terror. And I felt my parents' grief, a crushing, unending weight. I drove for hours, until the city was a distant memory, until I was on a lonely road surrounded by nothing but fields and rust. I found what I was looking for, a desolate, abandoned scrapyard. There, among the mountains of rusted metal and broken dreams, I built a small pyre. I unwrapped my sister's body one last time, whispered an apology for my parents, for my own ignorance, for her entire, stolen life. I laid her on the pyre, doused it in lighter fluid, and with a flick of a match, I set her free. I watched as the flames consumed her. And as her tiny, earthly prison turned to ash, I cried. I cried for the sister I never knew. I cried for the parents I could never go back to. I cried because I had done the most merciful thing I could imagine, and it was also the most monstrous. They'll come home. They'll see the open door. They'll know what I've done. They will hate me. They will despise me for taking away the one thing they had left of her, even if it was a perversion of her memory. I freed my sister, but I destroyed my family. Story 2. My family doesn't have a graveyard. We have a pantry. My family doesn't age like other people. My grandmother was 98 when she passed, but she looked 65, maybe younger. My great-uncle is 102 and still chops his own firewood. We've always credited it to good genes, and our one sacred tradition, the renewal stew, served at every major family gathering. It was a rich, dark, savory stew that made you feel warm from the inside out, full of life. When Grandma Rose died, I was the one who inherited the old family farmhouse. Tucked away in her study, I finally found it, the original, handwritten recipe book, bound in cracked leather. I felt a thrill, like I was finally being let in on the secret. I opened it to the page for the renewal stew. It was mostly blank. There were no ingredients listed for the stew itself, only 2 cryptic notes in my great-great-grandmother's spidery script. For the broth, see the cellar instructions. For the seasoning, see the attic instructions. Asterisk. The cellar was damp and smelled of earth. Behind a stack of old canning jars, I found a loose stone in the wall. Pulling it free revealed a dark, hidden chamber. Inside, arranged in neat rows, were a dozen large, unglazed clay pots filled with a dark, peaty soil. A thick, pale, gnarled root snaked out of the soil in each pot, looking disturbingly like a human hand. A dusty journal sat on a small table. The entries, dating back to the 1800s, described the process. When a member of our family dies, they aren't buried or cremated. They are planted. Their bodies are prepared with a special mixture of herbs and laid to rest in these pots. Over the years, the soil and the body produce a life root. This root is harvested, boiled for 3 days, and becomes the broth for the renewal stew. I felt a wave of nausea. We weren't just eating stew. We were consuming the concentrated essence of our dead ancestors. Shaking, I went to the attic. In a locked trunk, I found a collection of small, ornate silver boxes, each engraved with the name of a living family member. I found my own, my name freshly engraved. Inside each box was a small, sharp, obsidian knife. Another journal explained the final step. The seasoning. It wasn't a spice. At each gathering, every family member present must make a living contribution to the stew. A few drops of blood, a sliver of fingernail, a tear, cried directly into the pot. This offering of the living is what awakens the ancestral broth. I slammed the book shut, my hands trembling. It was a grotesque, cannibalistic ritual. I vowed I would never participate. The next major gathering was for the autumn equinox. I made an excuse not to go, claiming I had the flu. I felt a sense of righteous defiance. A week later, my mother called, her voice thin and weak. "Your Aunt Carol isn't doing well," she said. "She's had a sudden decline." I drove to my aunt's house. The woman who opened the door was a stranger. She looked 80 years old, her skin thin and translucent like parchment, her hair patchy and white. But it was Aunt Carol. She was only 58. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a desperate, hungry light. "You didn't come," she rasped, her hand gripping my arm with surprising strength. Her fingernails were cracked and yellow. The stew, it wasn't strong enough. It's always weaker when someone is missing. I finally understood. We don't have good genes. We have a curse. A rapid, horrifying decay that is constantly trying to claim us. The stew isn't a fountain of youth, it's the only thing that holds the rot at bay. We aren't living long lives, we are desperately, grotesquely staving off an accelerated death. The winter solstice is next month. My mother called again yesterday. She told me my great-uncle's hands are so stiff he can no longer hold an axe. She told me she found a new gray hair, and when she plucked it, a small patch of skin came with it. Then she asked if I would be coming home for the solstice. Her voice was casual, but the question hung in the air, heavy and raw. They need me. They need my contribution. I'm looking at the small silver box with my name on it. The little black knife sits inside, cold and sharp. I have a choice. I can go, participate in this stomach-churning ritual, and feed the curse to keep my family looking young and vibrant while I know the horrifying truth. Or I can stay here, clean and pure, and watch them all fall apart, knowing that the same rot is flowing through my own veins, waiting for its turn. Story 3. My fire alarm moves at night, and I can't sleep. I'm a 32-year-old male, and have been living in my apartment for a few years. The building is an old Victorian house in New England that has been renovated into a duplex. My upstairs apartment is empty, and I live alone on the first floor. I suffer from severe insomnia. As I'm writing this, it's 10 in the morning. I'm at a complete loss at how to explain all of this. Last night, I experienced true hell. I'm still frozen in shock and fear. Please tell me I'm not losing my mind. 3 nights ago, my bedroom fire alarm started moving. I'm aware this is a small thing, and with my insomnia it could easily be explained away as a hallucination. As soon as I shut the lights out, I find myself staring at this tiny green flashing light on my ceiling by the bedroom door. One blink every 10 seconds. Blink. The light was suddenly 5 feet to the left. Another, and the light moved again. I turned my bedside lamp on thinking I may have a firefly playing tricks on me. The alarm was in its rightful home, and there wasn't another light source in sight. I continued testing this theory, timing the light flickers in the pitch black. The light would flash, then flash again several feet away. At one point, there were 2 flashing lights nearly 10 feet apart. As morning came, my alarm went off. I was exhausted. I inspected the fire alarm closely. It was an older model with no real visible markings. The light blinked innocently every 10 seconds just as it should. I dragged myself to work and wrote it off as a hallucination brought on by insomnia. That afternoon after work and dinner, I passed out on my couch from exhaustion. Sleep finally came and I woke up around 10 p.m. in a complete daze. The apartment was dark and silent as I made my way to bed. As soon as I opened the door, 2 green lights flickered brightly beneath my bed. I jumped back and turned on the bedroom light. My paranoia was getting out of hand at this point. There was nothing under my bed, and the fire alarm above the door flashed in its usual pattern. I crawled into bed, turned the light off, and tried to sleep. That's when the noise started. The alarm let off a sudden shrill beep. In my anxious, exhausted state, I quickly sat up to look at the alarm. The light was red. I knew I needed to call maintenance the next day, as I was not allowed to replace the batteries on my own. I spent the night with my ears covered by my pillow trying to ignore the shrill intermittent beep. As I waited for the sun to rise, I began noticing a bright flash accompanying the beep. Far too bright to be from a tiny source like the alarm, I felt chills begin creeping up my back. I opened my eyes. The alarm light was gone. High up near the top of my doorway were 2 laser red dots, 6 inches apart. The lights moved slowly through the threshold of my open door, never blinking. I unfroze myself and quickly turned my lamp on. My bedroom door slammed with such force the entire room shook. My body was frozen in fear. I took a deep breath. I'm losing it, I thought. Everything was in its rightful place. The bedroom door was even slightly ajar as I had left it. I cautiously scoured the house for intruders, gripping a pocket knife until my hand was numb. Nothing at all, other than the low battery beep of my fire alarm in the background. I needed to call maintenance first thing. I laid back down, and turned off the light. The red light flashed normally and the beeping felt almost like a familiar rhythm. I was terrified, but I slept. I awoke feeling anxious. The fire alarm light was back to green and the beeping felt had stopped. I called maintenance right away and told them I had a fire alarm acting up. The guy on the other end paused, and asked if I was sure. I repeated myself and he stayed silent for a moment before saying that they would send someone first thing the next day. My heart sank. I needed reassurance, and I don't know how I could live through another night. Work dragged on. My body ached with tension, and my eyes were ready to burst. When I finally made it home, I decided to sleep on the couch for the night. Around 9 p.m. began the worst nightmare of my entire life. As soon as the sun set and darkness had filled my apartment, the beep came back. This time it was louder and far more shrill. I was right on the verge of sleep when I heard my bedroom door creak open in the distance. I shot awake, frantically looking for my phone to get a light. I turned to look toward my bedroom. 2 bright red lights were floating down my hallway. Unblinking, and seething. The beep became louder as the lights moved like eyes on a massive body moving towards the couch. I scrambled to the floor as the beeping intensified. Frantically crawling in the pitch black, I spotted an orange glow from the kitchen. Using this light as guidance, I ran into the kitchen. What I saw shook me to my core. The room was ablaze in a tornado of fire coming from the old pantry area. The blinding heat sent me reeling back toward the front door. I glanced back to see 2 green lights floating 6 inches apart above my couch as the entire empty building was engulfed in flames. As I'm now writing this at 10 a.m., I'm outside with the fire department and police. The fire is out, and they are chatting nearby about how old faulty electrical work was the culprit. I listened in as the fire chief approached the building landlord, and began berating him. I froze solid when I heard what he said. In all my years, I've never seen negligence this bad. There wasn't a single fire alarm installed in the whole damn place. You're lucky the fire alone woke him up. Story 4. If you ever get a call at 3:17 a.m., answer it and please believe what they are saying. For the first time in my life I was finally happy. Well, I was until this week when the phone rang for the first time. I was asleep next to my boyfriend. Let's call him Ryan. Ryan was the sweetest and most caring man in the world. He would do anything for me and I would do anything for him. But that all changed that night. I woke up to the phone ringing. I was barely awake and I could only just manage to open my eyes slightly. Through the slight gap I saw it was 3:17 a.m. Who the hell is calling me at this time of night? It must be something bad, I thought whilst I reached over for my phone. Ryan hadn't moved. He must have been in a very deep sleep. I picked up the call and groggily said, "Hello." Ryan has a second cell phone. It's hidden above the shower. Move the loose ceiling tile. You'll find it there. The voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it had a raspy quality to it. It certainly wasn't a voice of someone I knew, but I thought it must be a prank. However, before I could even respond, the anonymous caller cut the line dead. I sat there for a few moments thinking this must be some kind of joke, but it wasn't funny. I didn't understand why someone would joke about that. If it was a friend, they know my past, they know I have been cheated on before and it broke me. Some friend there if it is one of them. I decided I would go and check just for my peace of mind. There's no harm in checking, and if there isn't anything there, I could just go back to sleep and forget about the prank until tomorrow. I carefully got out of bed so as not to wake Ryan and crept over to the bathroom door. I had to stand on the edge of the bath to reach above the shower, but I found a loose tile and moved it. I reached up and felt around for something. I didn't find anything at first and felt a sense of relief wash over me. But then as I got round to the part just above my head, I felt a phone. My mind began racing. What was this doing here? Surely Ryan couldn't do this to me. Then my mind went back to the call. How could anyone even know this? Was it a friend of Ryan's he had told about the phone and they were warning me? I stepped down and turned the phone on. Luckily there was no lock. I swiped it open and went to the messages. There were hundreds of messages dating back to over a year ago with someone called Jasmine. They had even mentioned me in the texts. "Carla's at it again. She's always trying to start arguments, never leaves me alone." One text read, "You need to leave her, babe. I need you, I love you." I couldn't read anymore. Tears began to fill my eyes and I could barely see anything. I was distraught. How could he do something like this to me? I ran to the bedroom, threw the phone at him and started shouting. He had no remorse. He just asked how I knew about the phone. I kicked him out that night and told him never to come back. He took what he could and said he would come back for the rest later. I told him he would never step foot in this house again and that I would mail his stuff to his new address. I called my sister, crying down the phone to her. She said she would come and stay with me a few nights in the guest bedroom. She came over and we watched a few films, drank some wine and ordered takeout. It made me feel a bit better, but I was still devastated. I told Lauren that I was going to head up to bed around 11 p.m. I fell asleep quickly, probably the wine's doing. Then again I was woken by the sound of my phone ringing on the bedside table. I was still a little drunk and had almost forgotten about the call the previous day. I told Lauren about it, but she was convinced it was one of Ryan's friends who felt guilty about knowing he was cheating. I picked up the phone and read the time. 3:17 a.m. shown on the screen in big bold white letters. The same time as yesterday. I started to shake slightly and I could feel my heart beating out of my chest. After what seemed like forever, I finally built up the courage to answer the call. Hello, I said, stammering. For a second the line was silent. Then, in that quiet raspy voice the caller said, "He left something behind. Under the floorboard. The third one from the wardrobe." The call ended. I called out to Lauren but there was no answer. She must have fallen asleep on the couch downstairs. I paced around the room for a minute thinking. I eventually went and got the flathead screwdriver from the bathroom and knelt down in front of the wardrobe and counted until the third floorboard. It came up easier than expected. There was a small bag in there. I grabbed the bag, put the floorboard back, put the screwdriver on the side table and sat cross-legged on my bed. The bag contained an engagement ring. The one that Ryan had told me he was saving up for, the one he never got to give me. I looked at it in disgust. Just thinking about what he had done to me. I was in the middle of cursing him out in my mind when a small USB flash drive fell out of the bag. I hadn't noticed it before. It was one of those mini ones. It read, SanDisk 64 GB, on the side, not that I really knew what that meant. I was curious about what could be on it. I thought it must be videos of him cheating on me with that girl he was texting. I loaded up my laptop and plugged the flash drive in. On it there were folders with multiple girls' names on them. I opened the first one. What I found there horrified me. I can barely even write this without feeling the urge to vomit. It started off with pictures of the girls sleeping. In a few of them he was holding a knife near their necks while they slept. There were hundreds of these photos of multiple different women, but the last photo of each of the folders was the same. The woman was laid naked on the bed, with her throat slit, covered in blood. In the corner Ryan was standing there with a sinister grin on his face, holding the knife. Every single one of these folders were the same, except mine. I felt nauseous, my head was pounding and I felt like I was about to pass out. The man I loved was some kind of psychotic killer and he was planning on doing the same to me. There were pictures of me sleeping and him holding the knife near me, just like all the rest of them. I was about to get out of bed and rush downstairs to Lauren, but I was stopped by the sound of my phone ringing. I looked at my phone bewildered. It read 3:17 a.m. and an unknown number was calling me. It made no sense how I checked the time before and it said 3:17 a.m. I answered, still confused, and the same voice spoke to me again. "He's here, Ryan is downstairs. He's about to come up." The line cut off and I dropped my phone. I heard the creak of the stairs with each of his footsteps. I panicked, not knowing what to do. I looked around and realized I still had the screwdriver, so I grabbed it and hid behind the door. Ryan crept slowly and opened my door as quietly as he could. As he entered I drove the screwdriver as hard as I could into his shoulder. He yelped in pain but didn't go down like I thought he would. He grabbed me by the hair and threw me to the floor. I looked at his right hand and saw the long blade that would be the cause of my death. "You stupid bitch. Look what you've done." "No. I should have killed you, BEF." Before he could continue on, Lauren had woken up from all the commotion. She had grabbed a knife from the kitchen and ran upstairs. She saw Ryan on top of me and pushed the knife straight into the back of Ryan's neck. He fell down with a thud next to me, with half of him falling on me. I pushed him off and leapt up and hugged Lauren, crying with relief. We called the police and we were both taken to the station, where we were told Ryan was dead and that they would be looking into the women on the flash drive. That is where I am writing this from now. So if you ever get a phone call at 3:17 a.m. from an unknown number, please answer it, and please, for the love of God, do what it says. If I didn't, I would be just another victim on that sick man's flash drive. Story 5. My daughter's imaginary boyfriend. I never used to believe in anything beyond what I could see. I'm not religious, not spiritual, not even superstitious. I fix roofs for a living, drink my coffee black, and fall asleep to old war documentaries on the couch. Simple man, simple life. But that changed when my daughter started talking about her boyfriend. Her imaginary boyfriend. Her name is Lily. She's 7 years old. Blonde hair, soft eyes, loves jelly sandwiches with the crusts cut off. She's the kind of kid who leaves notes in my lunchbox that say, "I love you, Dad," with little doodles of stick figures and smiling suns. Her mother died when she was 4. Car accident. I was the one who had to tell her. I remember holding her while she cried, saying over and over, "It's okay, Daddy. I still have you." So yeah, it's just been us two since then. And we've made it work. Until about a month ago. That's when she told me about Peter. I was washing dishes after dinner. She sat at the table, swinging her legs, humming something tuneless. "Daddy?" she asked. "Yeah, sweetie. Do you want to meet my boyfriend?" I chuckled. "Your boyfriend? Aren't you a little young for that?" She giggled. "He says age doesn't matter." That gave me pause. "Who's he?" "Peter," she said, like I was dumb for not knowing. "He's nice. He plays games with me in my room. And he says he's gonna marry me when I turn 8. I dried my hands and knelt next to her. "You know imaginary friends aren't real, right?" She frowned. "He is real. He just doesn't like when grown-ups see him." That night, I checked her room before bed. Looked under the bed. In the closet. Usual parent stuff. Nothing there. Just a few dolls, some drawings, and her nightlight glowing purple. I kissed her goodnight. As I closed the door, I thought I heard whispering. I figured it was her playing pretend. But then things started to get strange. I'd wake up and find her bedroom door wide open. Lights on. Stuff moved around. I once found all her dolls piled in the bathtub, their heads turned toward the door like they were waiting for someone. I asked her about it. Peter likes to redecorate, she said. Another night, I heard music playing softly from her room. I opened the door. It was one of those creepy music box lullabies, but we don't own a music box. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring at the corner. Smiling. There was nothing there. I asked her who she was looking at. She said, "Peter's showing me what he looks like." I asked her to describe him. She said, "He's really tall. Like, taller than the ceiling. But he bends down to talk to me." That didn't sit right. The drawings were next. It started with one taped to the fridge. Innocent enough. Crayons. Blue sky. Green grass. Stick figures. At first glance, I thought nothing of it. Lily always drew her and her mom, or her with a princess crown, or holding balloons. But this one was different. In the middle stood a small figure, clearly Lily, wearing her favorite yellow dress, the one with the bunny on it. She was holding hands with something tall. Much taller than the trees behind them. The figure was black, not colored black, pressed black. Like she had pressed the crayon so hard the paper had torn in places. It had no face, no arms, just long, stretching fingers reaching from where the hands should be. And its head, a tall, oblong oval with slashes where eyes shouldn't be. There were no clouds in the sky. No sun, just red streaks hanging from above, like bleeding rain. I called her over. "Sweetie, who's this?" She smiled proudly. "That's me and Peter. We're playing outside." I tried to keep my voice even. "And the red lines, those are sky scratches. Peter said they happen when he's happy." I found more over the next few days. In her backpack, under her pillow, one taped inside her closet. Each one worse than the last. Peter standing in her doorway, impossibly thin, with arms that reached the floor. Peter curled up at the foot of her bed with a mouth stretching across his entire chest. Peter floating outside my window, staring in. But the one that shook me the most. She drew my room. And it was exact. Down to the crooked lamp on my nightstand and the crack on the ceiling. In the picture, I was asleep. And standing over me was Peter. His hand inches from my face. His head tilted unnaturally far to the left. And in the top corner, written in her uneven handwriting, "Peter says he likes you." That night at dinner, I asked her gently, "Lily, why did you draw that one of me sleeping?" She didn't even look up from her mashed potatoes. "He told me to." "Why does he want you to draw him?" She paused, then shrugged. "He likes pictures. He says they make things realer. And he thinks you look silly when you snore." I felt cold, like something just walked across my grave. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me twitch. I left the hallway light on like I was the kid now. At 3:12 a.m., I woke with a start. No dream, just woke. Like something whispered in my ear. The air felt off, stale. I sat up. The bedroom door was wide open. I never sleep with it open. I stared at the doorway, heart hammering. Darkness seemed thicker out there, not just absence of light, but something, watching. And faintly, just barely, I thought I saw something long and tall slip out of view, as if it had been standing there a second before. I tried to be rational. I even considered taking her to a child psychologist. But then she stopped eating. Stopped playing. Just sat in her room, mumbling. I started recording her at night. Set up an old baby monitor with motion detection. I didn't expect to catch anything. I wanted proof nothing was happening. I wish I hadn't looked. At 2:44 a.m., her door opened by itself. No wind, no creaks. It opened. Then, slowly, her blanket slid off the bed. She didn't wake up. Something moved by the foot of her bed. Not quite visible, just shadows distorting. The camera glitched. Just once. When it came back, the room was empty. So was her bed. I ran to her room in a panic, but she was there, curled up in the corner, eyes wide open, whispering. He took me to the inside-out place. I couldn't get her to explain. She just kept saying the same thing. "Peter has a place. It's quiet there. No skin, no sound, no time." I told her Peter had to go. She started screaming. Said if I made him leave, he'd get angry. She told me, he doesn't like when people say he's not real. That's when he gets messy. I started burning the drawings. Threw away the nightlight. Put salt at her window, like some old superstition. I was desperate. That night, I heard Lily talking again. I stood outside her door. Listened. Her voice was shaky. "No, Please don't make me. Please. I'll be good. Don't hurt Daddy. I threw the door open. No one was there but her. She looked at me with tear-streaked cheeks. He doesn't like you anymore. The final straw came 3 nights ago. I was asleep on the couch. I woke to the sound of humming. Lily's voice. I looked up, and she was standing on the ceiling. Upside down. Like gravity didn't apply. Her eyes were rolled back. And she was humming a song I didn't recognize. Behind her, in the shadows near the corner, something tall moved. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Just watched. Then, suddenly, she collapsed. I ran to her, held her. She whispered in my ear. He says you saw him. Now you have to come too. I'm writing this from a motel. I packed our bags, grabbed Lily, and left that house. She hasn't spoken since. Only stares at me. Sometimes smiles in her sleep. Sometimes whispers in a voice that doesn't sound like hers. I thought imaginary friends went away. I thought kids grew out of them. But I think Peter's real. And I think he's older than anything we understand. I don't know what he is. But I know this. When Lily turns 8, she says they're getting married.
Thank you for spending your night with me. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and comment where you're listening from. And if you want more rain-soaked nightmares, check out the next video. Sleep tight, if you can.